Hello! Happy Black Friday. Perhaps some of you went shopping and bought a violin and need to tune it, or some of you already have a violin and need to tune it. Either way, if you're new to the violin, there are three things. There's one, you need to tune it whenever you play it, and then the two is housekeeping with the bow. You need to tighten it, loosen it. Tighten before you play, loosen after. And the third thing is cleaning cloth, because you want the violin to stay fresh, you want it to stay new, otherwise the rosin will eat at the wood. We'll start with the bow. As you can see, the stick of the bow is very shaped like a smiley face, and that's how the bow likes to be, especially when it's in its case. You don't want to loosen so much that the end comes out, because it will come out. Stuff will come off if you loosen too much. But nevertheless, the bow is happy. Before you play, you simply turn this side righty-tighty, and you want to make sure that the bow is still smiling a little bit. So if you look at the bow, it's still curved down, which is what you want. You don't want it to be straight. Okay? And when you're done playing, likewise, remember to lefty-loosey, untighten the bow, right, so that it's loose when in its case, so that it lasts longer. And bows can be expensive. Hybrid bows are like $200, $300. Some of the better bows are $500, and the cheaper bows are like $60. Next, the tuning. Okay, so this violin in particular, it has one fine tuner on the E string, and it has the coarse tuners on the scroll box. You want to be very careful with the scroll box tuners, because you can and will break the string if you're not careful. You can only turn these very, very, very little minute turns at a time. Not turns, but like very, very little at a time, because otherwise you'll break the string. The other thing with the coarse tuners is you want to keep one hand close to the scroll so that you don't put too much tension on the scroll. And you want to be, as you're slightly turning the peg, you want to be pushing in towards the scroll, so that way or that way if you're turning one of these. Again, very careful. Advice to have some help from a violin teacher if you're new to this, but if you don't have a violin teacher, be very careful. Now, fine tuners, if you're new to the violin, I recommend you use the fine tuners when you don't have to. Sometimes the fine tuners won't get you to the right tune if you're too far out of tune, or if you haven't played for 2 months and the strings are now just loose, you have to use the pegs. But if you've played recently and the strings are still mostly in tune, you use the fine tuners when you can. Of course, you can't with these strings when you don't have the fine tuners, so that's a trade-off. Now, the question, how do you know if you're in tune or not? There are three ways. The first way is the most basic, and that is you take a guitar or a piano or something that is already in tune, and you play one of the strings. You need to know, of course, which string is which. For the violin, you have A, D, G, and E. And these are the notes that the strings represent. And for the viola, you also have C. So using that method, you play the note, and you play the note. And then you tune either here if you don't have the fine tuners, or here if you have the fine tuners. The second way is to use some sort of a hardware tuner. The most basic hardware tuners, and actually this has to do with the first method too, is you used to have these, even now you can find them on like Amazon and whatnot. You have this, it's called a tuning fork. It's a metal piece with two things at the end. You whack the piece on a table and then you put it against the violin and it makes a tone. That's kind of similar. So the tuning hardware, you can use something like this, for instance. There are clip-on tuners. You can clip them on the scroll. I used to have one of those, then I gave it to my sister, and so now I only have the pedal. But those guitar tuners that you use for tuning a guitar, they will work for the violin as well. You can put it on here. And some of the cheaper ones won't work too good, so just a heads up depending on what you buy. I had one good one, and then the one I gave to my sister, and then I had one bad one that didn't even turn on at one point, and I had to throw it away. So, yeah, okay, and then there's this, but the pedal will only work if you have a pickup. A pickup is this thing. My violin has a pickup. Most acoustic violins will not have a pickup by default, but you can install one. You search for violin pickup, and you can find them. And the pickup is usually glued into the bridge, so you want the luthier to work on it. Okay, so as far as how this works, you can see this is a 1/4 inch plug on the pickup. It's an instrument, it's actually an instrument TS plug, or it could be TRS. I'm not entirely sure on that end, but I know they vary by pickup. And then this is called a pedal. Yes, you don't press it except for the button in the middle, but these things that you plug instruments into, they are called pedals. A pedal. And then you look for on the back it says, on this side it says input, and that's where you want to put you plug your violin into, and this is also a 1/4 inch. You want one of these cables. It is a 1/4 inch TRS cable, or you could use an instrument TS cable as well. It just varies how many connectors they have. And then one end goes into the violin, and the other end goes into the tuner pedal. And then you pick up the violin, and you play the note. Alright, and the third way to tune is to use a tuner app. I personally use my app that I have developed. It's called Decibelion. You're welcome to try it out, it's free. There is a screen in there that has a paywall, but the tuner does not. The tuner is free. And even the paywall screen, it is also free for up to 30 minutes a day. You're welcome to try it out. So in the Decibelion app has this little lion icon to it. And then you click on the tuning fork, and there you go. It uses the phone's microphone. There are other tuner apps that also use the microphone and do a similar thing, so it's similar in that regard, but my app has an extra feature that other tuner apps currently don't, so. On the right here is just a reference chart. It doesn't really do anything, so like for the violin, it just shows us what scientific note name each of the violin strings is. And if we compare this to the hardware tuner, we can just see how it behaves. So you can see in the hardware tuner, the green line is what we want it to be in tune. So you can see the blue is where we are actually. The blue was a little bit above. And you can see here, the arrow is a little bit above. So it means we're just slightly just a pinch sharp, but in the violin world, if you have fine tuners, you can fine tune it, but if you have pegs, just leave it be. Unless you need to be really, really in tune, then you can like spend 10 minutes tuning, but we're also a little bit above, okay. So this one's a little bit more sharp. The way you tune this, and it is highly recommended that you kind of hear, maybe pluck the string while you do this, so that you hear when you're making it too sharp or flat. Okay. As you can see, I'm trying to turn it very little, but I'm also pushing it in at the same time. Because otherwise it can come out and then it'll just be loose. And by the way, if you make it loose enough, you see how it's at G3 here. G3 is what we want it to be. loosen a little more, and it's an F sharp instead of a G. It's a sharp F sharp, if that makes sense. But we want it to be a G, not an F sharp, so even though it says we're a sharp F sharp, we want to go up, so we just... It looks about right. Just push it in one more time just in case. I say that's good enough for us. 5 cents. Some people argue for 1 cent. By the way, these numbers over here, so these, plus 10, plus 20, minus 10, minus 20, they're called cents. They are how many percent of a semitone are we off. So 50% means we're half a semitone away. But for all we know, we just want to be near like plus or minus 5 cents for most applications. And the E string is easy because we have the fine tuner. By the way, E string is also the one most fragile because it's the thinnest, and it's actually made out of a slightly different material than the other strings. So be extra careful. So it's showing we're slightly flat. It means that we need to do righty-tighty on the fine tuner. Turn it right, clockwise. And that was it. I only turned it like a quarter turn, the fine tuner, and it's in tune now. At least as in tune as we care for right now. So yeah, that is how you tune an instrument. Now, the final bits, as I mentioned before, you have this bow. It's still a little bit smiling, and that's good. When you are done playing, you want to loosen it, so lefty-loosey, or counterclockwise if you look from this direction. Okay. Just make sure it's smiling more, but don't turn it so much that things start to come out. You just want it to be kind of loose. And the final thing, the thing that I see a lot of people forget to do, or maybe they don't care to do, is the cleaning cloth. If you want your instrument to last and to be pretty, to stay pretty, then you need to clean it after you play it, because the rosin from the bow lands on the wood and also stays on the strings, and it puts wear and tear on them if it just sits for a long time. So you just clean the strings off, then you put the cloth underneath, clean the fingerboard, put the cloth underneath again, and clean the wood. And maybe clean the wood under there as well. And see if there's any under the bridge. Maybe clean it under the bridge as well. And finally, when you put the instrument away, it is advised, especially if you're going to travel somewhere and the instrument is going to be bounced around, you want to put the cloth under the tailpiece and just wrap it like this. And then put the instrument in your case. Unplug it, of course. And the reason you do that is because if the instrument is bumped too much while you're traveling and the bridge collapses, that way the cloth protects the wood underneath so that it stays pretty, so you don't have to refinish it or anything. Because if you have to refinish an instrument, it is going to sound a little bit different than it was before. So if you care about your sound, probably do this. Alright, I hope this helped somebody, and enjoy your instrument. Bye.